Hey, Drew, thanks so much for getting on the show. I really appreciate it. I mean, this is personally some fun for me too, because we had just been on tour and we haven't seen each other for a while. It was like we had this great experience and then there was this big break because of the whole COVID thing. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Drew is a vibraphonist, entrepreneur, father, mentor, educator. I mean, the labels go on and on, but I just have to say, like, I know you personally with playing in your band, The New Standard, and on tour with Sarah. So it's just awesome to get on and talk with you, man. It's been a minute.
Yeah, man. Thanks you so much for having me. I got to tell you, you just had Dave Koz on here, so I'm super humbled. You have Bria on here, and just all these legends that you're connected with. So I really feel humbled and just honored that you think I have something of value to add. So thank you very much, man.
I feel like every time I have a new project, I'm texting you at some point saying, "Hey, Drew, can you get in on this?" Like whether it's a podcast, a course, whatever. I mean, you're just a supporter, man. I honestly, like, we support each other on projects, and that's what it's all about. So, I mean, and you're well connected too. You just did Stephon Harris, so let's just show off right now a little
Oh man.
bit.
Yeah, that was amazing, man. But honestly, it's just I think that's the biggest thing it's so important to support each other, man. I mean, and sometimes there's so much noise in social media land, and now we're kind of all in it because of the situation that we just have to be conscious of, like, stopping for a second, like, that's the currency now, liking something, commenting on something, sharing it, just seeing what you can do to support, especially since most of it doesn't even cost us much other than a few minutes of our time, and the value can be exponential. So I'm happy to support, man. You're doing amazing things for our community.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I wanted to get into that because, one thing I always saw as I would look to when we were in all these musical situations together where you'd hire me for, or we'd be on tour, is that you have a really good ability to take a situation and lift it up, right? Like you come into maybe an organization and get it going, get the arts moving, getting the groups booked, or you come into a band situation and being a musical director, that's often a role, you have. Where did you develop this ability, or what are the skills of being kind of a leader when it comes to the arts, either in an organization, or I wanted to kind of get into as far as the band, because you're often the musical director or the band leader for your own band, New Standard. How do you feel, what are those skills that you've kind of honed? Because I know them. I mean, I experience them, but I think that some people really lack those skills and what are those things?
I'm gonna tell you a kind of a quick funny story. So I was on tour with Sean Martin, who's one of the best people and piano players on the planet, by the way. Shout out to Sean.
Yeah, shout out.
And we're after show, we're chilling, and a friend comes up and says, he was asking some similar questions, and I said, well, man, you just got to ask, and the worst they could say is no, but you got to ask. And he's like, but ask what? Ask. And Sean looks over at me and says, what want to know what was happening? And I told him the context of the conversation, and he goes, the problem is, he looks over to this guy and goes, Drew doesn't realize that that's not a normal skill. It's something that I think as a result of having older brothers who are a lot older than me, you're kind of forced to grow up. But at the same time, I fell in love with the vibraphone at 15 years old and realized that I just wanted to share it. So I used to push my vibraphone, man, down to the end of the block in Mission Bay and Boca Raton, and there was like 3 little of those strip malls, like with a Fridays and a bunch of little stores in them and stuff like that, on the corner of 441 and Glaze Road. And I would literally go from door to door. I don't care if it was a law firm. I don't care if it was an ice cream shop. I don't care if it was a gym. I was like, hey, I play vibraphone. I got a piano player friend of mine. You guys want some live music? We'll come in. We'll just do one day. Hair salons, didn't matter. We'll do one day. We'll do one show, and don't pay us anything. And if you like it and we bring people, then you can hire us for a month. That's the deal. And I would do that everywhere. And of course, people would just look at me like, yeah, okay, kid, whatever. But some would, like, coffee shops and Borders books and stuff like that would be like, yeah, okay, we'll let you talk to this person and we'll do it. Played at a hair salon before. I didn't know that wasn't a thing. I was 15. I don't know. And we built some pretty cool things that way. So it's always been this idea, as a vibraphone player especially, I don't get called for stuff, maybe if I practice more, I don't know, but I never get called for stuff. And I always had to make my own way and figure out how to do that. And early on, I realized that the best way to get a lot of support is to support others, like add value to others. I didn't know that's what you call it, but I would try to show up for everybody's everything. And just in turn, it always just comes back around, man.
Well, I mean, but to what you're saying too, when the opportunities didn't present themselves just naturally, like, you're saying you took the initiative to, whether there are no gigs or performance opportunities maybe for vibraphone because it's not the go-to instrument maybe for a typical situation. You're going around making it happen because regardless. So that initiative, I think, and that kind of like internal leadership was generating those opportunities too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if people don't know about the instrument or they don't know about you, I mean, this could apply to anything. They don't know you. So the best you could do is try to put yourself in a situation to educate, which is marketing, right? I mean, to put yourself in a situation to be able to show them the value that would have as hey, me and you as a guitar piano duo, me and you, I mean, piano vibe duo or a guitar vibe duo. You might not have ever thought of it because you don't listen. It's not ubiquitous in public culture, But at the same time, being able to say, well, let's just try it. And they say, okay, well, I never thought about it. Yeah, that sounds good. I have time. Let's go ahead and play together. Whereas had you never asked, it's not because they don't like you or they don't want to hear you or they don't even appreciate you. They just never put that together. So it's really on you, on us. And I think that when you talk about trying to lift up organizations and the nonprofit work and stuff like that I've done, it's the same thing. It's a matter of, these people in this community don't know about jazz. So we have an opportunity to show them and show them correctly. I remember having the fight when we were trying to program Arts Garage about, hey, I heard this certain player of a certain instrument with backing tracks, and he plays at this wedding place and this place. And I said, that's fine, nothing against that. However, if we're going to be something different and educate people on what's possible and the beauty behind the communication of jazz music and what we're trying to do, we need to be very aggressive about finding the best of what we're trying to show them, and give the people some credit. Like, they want to hear quality stuff. They just don't know,
Yeah, and I have to say that, I mean, every situation we've been in, whether the situation ultimately continues for a certain length, I mean, it just always improved. I always just saw that, like, when we did jams or when you were in new places, when you were hosting jams in new places or at the Arts Garage, I mean, it definitely thrived and the audience received. Those were some of those performances that I won't forget because the audience reception was so overwhelming about just the feeling of joy to be there and the way you presented that and communicated, hey, we're all here to do something to share in this moment. So I just thought that was something unique to what you do. And I thought that was really special. I mean, going a little bit further, you don't just have that open mindset with just the community organizations, but even with your band, when the way that the new standard kind of operates, I've never felt that you've even had a definition. Maybe you have one for marketing purposes, but I meant within the band, I've never felt a definition or barriers on what it is or isn't. You seem to kind of explore it wherever you're feeling you want to go. Your musical influences from childhood or growing up, you make sure to incorporate those things. Like, when it comes to your music, how do you bring that same open-mindedness to what you're doing there? Because I haven't felt anything I did musically or anyone did musically was off limits, and if anything, it was kind of welcomed, like, oh, let's check that out, let's try that out, even from show to show. And the way that you're bridging music too.
I think that's just being curious all the time, and it also just goes back to making sure you have the right people. You'll say that because you're bringing great things to the table, right? I mean, even if the ideas might not be ones that I might have thought of, or I might have gone contrary, like I didn't want piano in a place, but you put piano in a place. It's more of a curious thing, and just being like, I wonder where that leads, as opposed to, well, that wasn't my idea. Like I am so limited in what I know and what I can do, but all of us together with all of the confluence of skills and superpowers we have, regardless of what they are, like when you put them together, we can make magic, and any band, and at any band where a guy just goes in and just, enforces martial law and this is the way it's going to be, like, even if that person is one of the most talented and best people on the planet, you're still just dealing with the limited point of view and reference that person has, both culturally and musically, and that is a disservice, I feel. So for me, every time we go together, the way we're talking now, I want to play music like this. I want you to throw something at me and me to throw it back. I mean, it sounds so like rudimentary to what jazz music really is, but I feel like sometimes it's like, I'm going to talk and you're going to whisper in the background until I tell you to talk, and that's not.
I'm going to solo and you're going to just comp the right what I want you to do. Yeah,
that's not fun, man. That's not fun. I want to have fun, and I think the best compliment I can ever get is when somebody comes up to me, especially a younger student, like a college student or something, and just says, "Man, you guys are just having so much fun. Like we could just feel the joy, off the stage, And how many times have we been out where I don't know if you ever listened back to any recordings that maybe we've taken, and I've just been like, oh, that sounded way better, but we were just having so much fun that everybody was vibing on it, and that joy was infectious, And I think that is to me the most. That to me is the goal. So if you're coming in and you're having a bad day, how can I make you feel better? How can we do this thing to where we're all on the same page? Or can I be empathetic and feel what you're feeling, And that to me is always the goal of shows. It's never to play all the perfect scales. If that happens, which on occasion, rarely, at least for me, it does. But more importantly, is to be able to share that joy or whatever the feelings are at that time. Can't do that if I'm not letting people speak.
Yeah, no, and actually that's really interesting. Like thinking that yes, retroactively, we can kind of go back and analyze a performance and we like point out all the things that would be, that's wrong chord or technical deficiency, whatever that case may be. But really, is that what mattered in that moment? Because in that moment, we were there and we realized the crowd reception, the feeling of joy that was brought is kind of shared between us. That was actually the real value shared. Not the audience is not going, well, he did what he was supposed to, like on like those technical things. Like no one's caring about that.
Yeah, I mean, people go to see you. 95% of the people that are going there don't know their scales. The people who are paying for tickets, at least, that's not why they're there. They're there to feel something, or they're there to see some of themselves in you, or to get some release. Like they're not artists. They want to. Man, that made me feel this way, or I was tearing up when I heard that, or I just felt that joy. It's a point of release. So if we're sharing, and we're connecting like that, we'll keep selling tickets, whether it's online or whether it's in the whatever space it is. But if we don't do that, I mean, I think that's always been the role, right? That's always been our job.
Well, for some, but I think that's just why I enjoy being in. That's why we keep working together, and that's why people enjoy being in your band. And to that point, over the years, you've kind of kept, ultimately, you can hire many different people. You've kept a core group. How do you choose that core group of people? I mean, why do you keep a certain band? Sometimes it's fun to switch cats up, for sure, but you definitely try to develop a longer term relationship with your band. You want that feeling of that you're in it together. Why do you choose to do it that way versus, just grabbing the next cat that you can grab? Or
well, I mean, mostly it's because I'm not that good, so I need cats to make me sound good. No, but I mean, honestly though, it's there's a certain, I feel like there needs to be trust up there, man. Like if you came in, had a bad day, didn't play well, made some poor choices, forgot some parts, I know you, I trust you, so I already know it doesn't really affect me. I'm more or less going at that mindset of like trying to cover and figure out how I could help you be successful and have a good experience. Like I'm serving you at that point, if that's because I trust you. Now, if I don't trust you and I don't know you, now I'm sitting here like, is this guy trying to take my gig? Is he trying to ruin? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's he doing?
Right, you don't know what my intentions really are.
Right, and I've had players, man. I'm not gonna mention any names, but I mean, there's been some players who are some of the best cats I know, who literally have been on stage with me, and I messed up a form. I'll tell you right now, it was Night in Tunisia, and I messed up a form on the solo. I guess officially it's supposed to be AAB on the solo, no extra A section, but I played AABA. Now, the first time that the guy soloing makes that mistake, like it's very obvious I didn't go to the B section. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But when the guy's just sitting there and it's like, this is the way the song is. This is the way the masters played it, that type of thing. To the point where I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, if we're going to change it, you should have said something. Like, you have perfect pitch, my guy. Like, dude, well, this, right? So, I mean, but go ahead.
No, I'm just saying you're really getting to something that kind of is at the base. Why is that the thing that's on the pedestal and not if that's what you're saying or in that moment, even if it's because you didn't realize it doesn't matter. If that's where the direction is going, why is the on stage decision to cut off exploration in a new direction? Right. For the sake of what?
Right, exactly. For winning some
A
jazz award.
recording done a certain amount of years ago.
Right, and you're gonna win the, I don't know, but some it must get, I don't, I have no idea. But at the end of the day, like, I know that will never happen. I know I could be free on a stage with people that I know and trust, and I know if I'm having a bad day, which has happened on tours, and
Yeah.
I know that everyone's got my back. Like, I know if I'm having a great day, people are gonna give me space. I know that if, just, and so for that sake, and also, man, when you have history with people, obviously they just know where you're going to go at some point. They know when you're building to a thing, or what they know what you want. They know, uh, yeah, they know what you want. Me and Bill have had so many failed projects together. And you just have Bill on here too. Shout out to him and his tuba course,
Yeah.
man.
Shout out to Bill Meter.
He's making us all look silly with that work ethic. But he's so we've been on so many failed projects together that we've tried. Like, let's play a duo gig and we'll bring some Kanye West tracks from 808 and Heartbreak, and I'll add a kick drum and I'll add a hi-hat, and he's like, all right, I'll bring the bass and the tuba and I'll loop this and we'll live loop it. And then we realize that a lot of people don't really live loop. They already pre-record, and then anyway. But right, but they play it, but then they hit the pre-recorded track. But we weren't doing that, man. We were raw, and so time is a construct with us at that time. So I mean, we've been through, and it was terrible. And we just had so much gear to lug around, and but that built to what, okay, that didn't work. Well, let's skim the fat and try this and go back to the drawing board. And when you build that much stuff, like, you just have all of this history that you're on stage pretty much sharing in every tune. So I love playing with the same cats. Even I'm up here in Atlanta now. I moved here. I haven't played with anybody. I'm it's like I'm in withdrawals, and I've only played with you guys.
No, I mean,
So
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I think it's there's value there to really developing a relationship with people long term, and even to what you're saying, like, you can make moments happen on stage either easier or better, like you're saying, with a build or something, because the other people know you. And then they can assist in that emotional development even better than a newbie, because they're like, I know where he wants to take this. I can assist right now. The recognition of that moment is
right,
a little bit easier because you've been there before, or you know what they're looking for.
And here's the other thing, is that I think you mentioned it earlier, either in our private discussion or on this, but you said a rising tide raises all ships, right? And that's true. And if I have a tuba player, a saxophone player, a trumpet player, a bass player, drum, I don't play those things. If I can help those guys get on, if I could on whatever little platform that I may have, help those guys get a leg up. Someone who's looking for it, it's not like he's taking my opportunity as a sax player, right? Like, he's taking a saxophone player's opportunity. So when I see, like, these guys get on and be able to get to these other platforms, like, that's just going to assist. They're going to give me the phone call, or they're going to at least be that access point to that next level that I would never have had access to because I play the vibraphone. So I just, always trying to make sure that those guys have a platform, and the people that you trust that know are going to do well with that platform and be a reference for you, is important too. So keeping people around who are good people, aren't going to go out there and be like, Drew, why'd you play with this guy, man? Like, this guy's terrible. It's like, oh, but he plays the scales well. It's like, all right, well, so it's always keeping people around that are going to go out there and continue that positivity.
Yeah, share your message, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, as a musical director, I know sometimes you're put in situation. I mean, you're the leader, right? And you have to make tough calls. So one of the things I think that one of the skill sets that's hard to develop, or isn't developed as much in the academia, is these extra, like, people skills, beyond the notes, beyond the music. What are the things you think, or what are the skills that have really come in handy to be a good musical director when, the band's, you're on the road and it's a tough spot, and, everyone's at each other, or they're at a situation? What do you think makes a good musical director, or a great musical director, from just someone who's put in that position? What are the skills you think have really carried you through to the level that you're at?
I mean, there's the obvious things like being organized, making sure everybody has an abundance of information. Which is huge. Obviously, get them the sheet music, get them the recordings, get them different types of recordings, send all the any extra information, over inform with plenty of time. But all the things, I think the biggest skill is picking the right people. I think that's the biggest skill. There's drummers that I love that I wouldn't pick to play with Sarah, because I know what Sarah wants. You know what I mean? Like, I know that the kind of drummer, and playing with a tap dance player is not going to be there's a certain type of consideration that if you were raised up educationally from a certain cultural, or a certain background, that you might not do that. Whereas if you came from a different type of one, that's usually a little bit more, you know. Same thing when I music directed for pop artists, like that they write their stuff on a guitar and a voice, so they don't hear a lot of drums. The only thing they're really hearing in their head is a backbeat. So if you get someone who's too noisy, who came up with too much busyness, I think that's 90% is picking the right people, and being able to tell, helping them understand that. The other part is managing the energy, managing and understanding how to make sure I do everything I can to make myself as invaluable as possible in those types of situations. I know how it feels to be an artist who just needs to be in a space where you're thinking about creation and you're not thinking about a bunch of other stuff. So it's kind of my goal to take all of that stuff off the plate. Even if it goes above and beyond, whatever needs to be done, and then I can sort it out later. It could be like, hey man, that run was rough. I think you're going to need to add a second person or get something else or deal with this and figure it out. But once I'm in that situation, if I didn't already make that call, all that falls on me. The goal is to help the artist just be able to be the artist and be able to know that whatever's going on behind them, if something's not there or if, we got off, that I'm going to be able to put it back together. Which also means knowing everybody's part for the most part, being able to cover and fill and knowing where that's supposed to be or where this is supposed to be, so that I can, because I've been in situations where I was, where the musical director didn't know the parts. So they're looking at me like, what are you supposed to play that, what's going on? And I'm saying, I don't know, I'm playing what's on the page. And they're like, well, I don't know what the problem is. We'll have to rehearse it now. As opposed to just saying like, hey, I know that's what your part says, but you need to go ahead and cut 2 measures and jump over to here and repeat back to there, and just being knowledgeable. So it's putting in the legwork, really. Even if it's a small gig. Even if it's not a big thing. Bill is my musical director, and it doesn't matter if we're playing the same local point or we're on tour or we're up at Blues Alley or whatever. He's putting in the same level of energy into making sure that the job is done as he would either way.
Yeah, well, that's amen to that, because that's just taking this seriously. No matter the size or apparent, opportunity, all opportunities are equal in that sense, because you can believe they transmit the same kind of power. Small room, big room, either way. I wanted to touch on one point you talked about organization, and we talked about this before hopping on the call too. You have a very organized practice journal, and I think from what I've heard, it's better than what I got. I'll tell you that, and I just think that's invaluable. And I think that look, I didn't even have a practice journal for many years. Then I started to understand the value of tracking some of these things, or maybe logging or making notes on these things. And then even in your interview with Stefan Harris, he's talking about he was in a session rehearsing one chord for 11 hours.
11 hours.
And he's taking notes. And then just the thought of like, wait a minute, what is he taking notes on? Because if we're limiting. So what is your practice journal? And what is the value for young musicians to start getting that as an aspect of their practice routine, and just being, their career and taking this seriously?
Yeah, and I'll show you one of my my sample kind of page that I use here.
Okay.
So I kind of divide. This is just for me, like whatever works for other people. I kind of divide it into sections. So I have like a technique block maybe, or I have some exercise that I run, then maybe some music, then maybe another technique block, and then maybe some composition, something like that. So what I do is like write what I did, because 2 things can happen. Number one, you think you did more than you did. Like, man, I was down there for an hour, but you forget you checked your Instagram for 20 minutes and you did this and you did that. So, and then just kind of tracking your progress in terms of, where you started an exercise at, and this is not very jazz based, this particular page. This is more geared toward the technical stuff. Dirt is an exercise. I talk about going through each exercise you do in 12 scales. You go through each of those scales, and I kind of talk about like how fast I was able to get with them, what mistakes I made, and you get as detailed or not detailed as you want, maybe going through, then when you get to your music, you go through your music. And the point of all of that really is not only to see like, where you're not good, right? So when you so when you do this, you get to come back the next day and pick up right where you left off. Okay, this is where I stunk. And if the goal is to work on the worst thing and make it your best thing every single time, you can look like, all right, every time I get to F sharp, I'm bailing. Like I can't get past 140, 120, whatever. I'm going to start with F sharp today, and that's where I'm going to spend most of the time. And then I'm going to move forward and do it like this. And then so you can have more productive sessions, right? And productivity is the thing that's going to make these sessions feel good and give you the feeling you need to continue to practice the next time. The worst is when you're like, I'm playing in front of the instrument, and you stand in there in 10 minutes, you're like, what do I do? All right, I guess I got this tune I can work on, or I can just work on the same old things. And, by that time, half your time is gone, and now you're kind of out of time. So this way, you can feel progressive, but also an ancillary benefit is that there are times, and especially now, I think, in these times we're in now, where you can feel like you're not progressing much at all, where you can feel like you haven't gotten any better. And sometimes I like to look back a month or two at where I was at and what I was doing and how fast I was playing stuff or how good I was playing stuff or how much stuff I was playing or some of the questions I was asking in my practice journal, to be like, wow, I couldn't even play that at that tempo back then. Man, I couldn't even play this back then. I was asking a question about that. Man, I know that answer, and like I could play that now in these kinds of situations, just to make sure you realize that, like, even if you're making small progress, that progress amortized over time equals big results, right? So,
Well, that's actually really smart, because we're not our best critic. We're not our most objective observer. So having the objective kind of track record on things, do you set at any point, because you're kind of talking about this, picking up where you left off, are you setting a larger, maybe, and by large it doesn't have to be massive, but just larger goals so that that is tracking up to those points? Like, so you're saying the goal could be a tune, a project, and then you'll set that kind of out in the journal.
yeah, so most of the time, and like I said, I don't do as much technique work nowadays, especially when it comes to like building speed and dexterity and things like that. Um, so this is a little more of an example. Most of the time, this will look like working on 12 songs and which songs I worked on when and where I got up to and what my, played with recording, got through it, never, or didn't get through all of it. Here's a spot I keep on messing up, target that spot. And it'll be like that. So usually nowadays when I'm really intense on the practicing is when I have something coming up, which is different now, obviously, but typically it's you got something happening. So I'm doing my best to create my own things. Like I play these concerts with my girls and all this kind of stuff like that. So we have like a schedule of shows that we lay out, and
Yeah.
I'm challenging myself with some new things like singing. I'm going to try singing next one.
Yes.
I said it in public, so that I have to stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now social proof. You got to do it.
Right, exactly. So I mean, so stuff like that. But overall, for me, it's from a show to show or project to project, and it'll relate to here's what I have to be, and then I'll reverse engineer. So if we have and this goes back to the musical directing thing. If I know we have, like, we were in Pittsburgh end of January 25th or whatever it was, I want a week before that to be running down all the tunes, maybe even a week and a half, depending on how much time I have before that, to be running all the tunes with the recording with no breaks. And so that's the goal. And then if I know I have to be there a week and a half before, that means that 2 weeks before I need to be at this tempo with these tunes, or I need to have this many tunes with the record, whatever. And then that means 3 weeks before this and 4 weeks before this, leading me all the way back. And that's how I plan those things out. So each day kind of has like those goals at the bottom. And I write those out. I don't write those out each day. I write them out when I know I have the project, so I know where I'm trying to get to.
Awesome. And you and I both know, I mean, one of the huge values here is that, like what you said earlier, once you're if you're not in a school system that's feeding you the goal, like, there is no goal except what you're motivated by or what you decide to come up with yourself. I mean, no one's handing you that kind of iteration except for that own internal drive. And if you don't have that, like, you can set those yourself. So having this helps you really build those pillars and set the game plan for the long term, because it's not like your curriculum's handed to you after school.
Yeah, and also I never went through all the way through traditional music school, so I never had. I could say I never gained the strengths nor the handicaps that come with that.
Yeah.
So there was never like this test and this and this and this. So I've always had to kind of create my own, goals, my own deadlines, and I think I have my father came over here, he immigrated here from Jamaica, didn't get past the third grade, and made a really good life for himself. My brothers have always been entrepreneurs, so to me it wasn't. I never even thought that was a limitation at any point until. No, I never really thought it was. I mean, there's things that I wish, like when I see a student now who I know is succeeding at school and music, and they're just rock stars, of course, but for me, it wasn't, I got to work, and I just wasn't traditional schooling person.
Hey,
So
neither was I. I think it's a general asset over the long term, from how I personally feel about it. But
I just think
something that,
education happens, as a result, though, I have holes in my theory that I've been filling little by little, so whereas somebody else may have holes in the things we're talking about, like how do we go out
right.
and get the job? How do we be a music director? How do we be an entrepreneur? How do we do those things? So you have to get your education one way or the other. I just chose a less popular route, I guess.
Hey,
Yeah.
well, either way, I mean, one thing I definitely want to get into, and you mentioned this a bit, is your girls. You have daughters, and you're educating them now on music, and you get to kind of make those calls a little bit as far as how to get them into music and how to do that. I just find that fascinating. I myself do not have a family yet, but I would just that undertaking of how to go about that. Were there certain ways or things you decided on how you would introduce music to them, and then how that's kind of played out over their development? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's even different amongst the two. And
Yeah, it definitely is, and they're both very different kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when my 15-year-old was 8, I actually was telling the story today. I taught her all her. She was already showing a lot of talent. She's always had like a great innate sense of rhythm and great pitch, and since she was very young, and I taught her all her thirds and sevenths for the F blues for like a basic 12 bar F blues, and she was playing them. She played the melody for um, Blue Monk, and then she would play that, and she was killing, right? And I thought I was so proud because she's playing just thirds and sevens and just going through the changes, and then I sent it to Stefan, and Stefan hit me back and said, "Hey, that's cool, man, but like maybe just help her find her swing. Like she's got all her life to learn theory." And I was like, oh, and then we had a conversation about just giving her like a quadrat or a pentatonic or, something like that that works over the whole thing and let her just figure out like how she grooves and how she can communicate and not worry about, are you playing are you turning it around?
right, a deeper
Right?
skill, like thinking
Right.
of the deeper skill of feeling, not
When they're young,
whatever.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we did that, and she still does great. When she got into middle school and she went to an art school, went to Bach, and kind of educated her a little bit out of the kind of put self-consciousness in her, plus that, and she's an adolescent now, and all that kind of stuff, so, and she's starting to come back around now. So with my 6-year-old, my goal is to help her to have a positive relationship with music and see it as a place where she can express herself. So we haven't started anything formal. I have a couple books that I've been picking up when I see them, that I'm ready to get into it with her, but I want her to be the one who really is frustrated by not knowing something and wanting to learn more and wanting to be able to add to whatever she's doing. But right now, I was playing I Got Five on it. All of a sudden, I hear her playing I Got Five on it on the vibes. She picked up Mickey Mouse Clubhouse theme song on her own. And then now she's like improvising around it. So she's playing it with different rhythms. She's playing it with different things. She'll play it starting from 2 notes below and then hit the note right on it. So she's doing all this stuff, and I hear her in discovery mode. And that's what I want, then she'll go with the I Got Five on it groove, the ba-dunk, da-dunk, and she'll go to the drum set and play it on the drums and try to find the melody on the drums. Now, I would have loved to have picked up that skill to think melodically on the drum set, when I was coming up instead of just rhythmically. So some people, I see some people out there, man, and their kids are in lessons at 4 or 5 years old. I was in lessons at 4, but I'm enjoying her point of discovery, and I think there's going to be plenty of time to take all of that innate sense of feel and this positive relationship with the music, and once you turn it a little bit formal, it's just going to add to what she's already doing. So I don't even say, if I'm like on this interview and she started playing out there, I would say it's not a good time. I wouldn't say stop playing. I wouldn't say no, you can't play, or I don't ever want to say that. I want her always to feel like she can play, and that might be nothing, but for me it feels like a big thing, or if she's
But
playing.
encourage thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, and if
encourage
she.
awareness.
Right, and I just don't want her to think, oh, music's bad. I'm getting punished for playing music. I want her to just be like, okay, playing is cool. It's just not the right time. Or if she's playing like loud or beating them up, I'm like, hey, is that the nicest sound? What do you think about the sound you're playing? Well, is that pretty sound? No. I'm like, are you angry right now? Well, yeah, I'm kind of angry. Oh, okay. Oh, that's all right then. But maybe let me go put my headphones on, or something
Right,
like
right.
that. So just kind of connecting those dots. But as long as she has a positive relationship with it right now, then that's, and at the end of the day, I don't really care if they're musicians or not. I just think that there's skills you learn by playing music that are going to help them with whatever they do. And
Yeah, I thought that was something that was also really interesting about what you brought up in Stefan Harris's interview, which you were just saying that, you know, the skill set of being a musician that you get from practicing, whether it's, you know, the diligence of practicing or the open-mindedness or listening and being receptive to different people and different, I mean, all of these meta skills that really just make us good human beings all stem from a study of music. And to what you're saying, I was just curious that kind of answered my question, which is like, you know, obviously as a musician, it's kind of like selfishly like, yeah, that'd be cool. You know, they pursue that thing. Let's be honest, but that is, I think that's a healthier route in the long term that allows them to have their freedom on. Yeah, as long as you really have that solid foundation with music and relationship to it, that's all you ultimately.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no other thing that you know, where you can. There's like you have to make little. Everyone goes into practice sessions and you feel okay after them, but you don't get like massive gains. It's like working out. Like you can't do 100 push-ups in a day. Better to do 10 push-ups. You know what I mean? Over the course of time, every day.
They don't walk out with like a new set of arms. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think working out, music, and to an extent, and spirituality really are the only three things where you really get the benefit of learning patience and consistent, diligent effort over time is the only way to yield big results by concert time or by execution time. You know, school doesn't teach you that. It's like learn the test and get it done. So I think there's value in it. They both know they got to be in. You know, like my older one knows music's not an option until she's somewhere else. But I don't care if she does it for a living. Like if she wants to go to college for whatever, it's not going to break my heart. You know, so. But I hopefully. Hopefully whatever she's doing, like if she's out there, you know, she go have a successful day in surgery and comes home and gets to jam on her vibes to let out some stress. That's to me, that's the goal. You know?
That's the win. Yeah, that's the win. Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome. And I get to see their development just through the stuff that you post. And it's awesome. And it's even inspiring just to see, you know, that you guys are all, they don't just do it individually, but then you have, you know, you guys all play together. You have your series with them that you've been doing during this time where you guys are all performing music.
Yeah.
It's
live.
Awesome.
It's crazy because I'm trying to like, it's funny because, and a lot of that's helping me to take myself less seriously too, you know, and to realize what the point is because while I'm trying to play a bass line and I see my little daughter like noticing a butterfly and getting off beat while we're live on Facebook trying to record this. And I'm just like, hey, right now, here's a cue. Oh, and she comes back in, you know, but I'm messing up in the meantime or playing stuff I don't like. It's just like, but that's not the point, man. At the end of the day, you know, no one's, this is the time I get to spend with my kids, you know, you can't get that back. So you know, something we all get to do together and share together and document. And that's
I mean, but that's why it's being received, right? Like that's why the on the flip side, the kind of response that you've seen and I see it like is always a very you know, joyous response because that's what they're tuning in to see, right? I mean, you guys are covering great songs, but it's more than that they're looking for. They're looking for that moment that you're having with your daughters and that odd moment, that funny moment that, hey, we're all not going to take this too seriously in that sense because it's just it's fun. It's
right.
Yeah. And I think that's what's, you know, the people willing to kind of, the people willing to live that moment and kind of be more human are the reason that they're tuning into you over other. It's just that's real life. That's not the perfect, like I have my kids playing exactly and they never, you know, that's not really, you know.
Yeah, that's not the point. I mean, if that's what you're tuning in for, like, this is trash, you know, these guys aren't, you know, where's that perfect pitch kid that just hears those crazy chords, you know, it's.
Yeah, I mean, we see, you know, thanks to social media, you can open up your phone and see every prodigy out there. They now all have their own Instagrams, but we also know through experience, like some of those prodigies, because of necessarily in some cases the way that they're brought up and the way that they're, hey, like that kind of the parenting system and that different from what you're doing, I feel like can ultimately make the kid feel a different type of relationship, and they're the ones with the most potential on the start.
See Michael Jackson and Joe Jackson.
Yeah,
you know,
the list is endless on the damage. So that's awesome, man. And I just never have gotten to talk to you. I was always curious about your strategy or the way you were going about, you know, kind of educating your kids with music because I mean, the results are awesome, and you know, they're obviously all well, you know, on their respective things they're into. They're great.
Yeah, and I try some like with Logan, every now and then I'll be like, she'll be like, hey, can you teach me? She'll ask and I'll show some. She'll, no, I like doing it this way, and I'm just like, all right, well, when you're ready, just let me know.
Yeah,
And
you have to concede.
so that's yeah. So, but I'm trying to see where her strengths are at this age and play to them. Like she has a good sense of time. She likes to jam. She's very creative. So if I can take that and say, oh, hey, I got a great idea. What does this sound like if you do it like this? I can't. But if I tell this little stubborn kid that, hey, this is the way it should be done, she's going to be like, oh, no,
Yeah,
that's
because
not the way I'm doing
yeah,
it.
why?
Right, that's not the way I'm doing it. This I like it this way. And I'm like, oh, but what if you did this? Do you hear how it does this? Oh, yeah, that's cool. And it's her decision. Then, so it's really helping me be a better teacher. But I don't have all the answers. It's just sometimes I get, especially when it's I get a little frustrated when we're trying to play, and I see it right there, and I want to show her the things, but I'm just it's day by day. This works, this doesn't work. As long at the end of the day, as long as they're positive experiences, even if they're frustrating, like my older one, I do work with her, and when I get down on her, she'll get some tears. But she's 15; the stakes are a little higher now. You know what I mean? Like the idea of pushing through something and perseverance is a real thing that I need her to understand. So I'll push a little more and say, and when I say push, I mean I'm not yelling at her. I'm just like, don't give up. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Nope, it's not there yet. And I know that sense of frustration where you're probably not going to get it right in this session, but the idea is let's just keep pushing. Let's see where we can get it to. And so it's a different level of, and as her father, I can do that. So I try to be less about like, no, here are the notes, here's what's happening, versus you can figure this out. Like you can do this. You can make this happen. Like you have the strength, the power, and the knowledge. You don't need to ask me. I don't need to show you. You can figure this out, and we're not leaving until you figure it out. And
yeah, the internal endurance, that internal
right.
that's going to serve her the rest of her life. Yeah,
right.
100%. Well, I mean, you've been an educator for many years and excelled at that, and there's a bunch of ways to get into that, but I definitely wanted to get into today is Mallet Lab. I mean, we wanted to hop on. That was one of the reasons we wanted to talk because it's coming up, and I think it's just so exciting. So can you tell me a little bit more about what Mallet Lab is and maybe what it isn't too?
Sure.
Maybe people hear it and think one thing, and what is Mallet Lab?
Well, I'll tell you, obviously it's a little different now, but Mallet Lab, we started in 2017. And I've been running, when I had Arts Garage and I was on the board of Old School Square, all the nonprofit theaters in South Florida, I always had kids camps. So since like 2006, I've been running camps for kids from 6 to 13 years old at my various venues. And that's cool because, there's a ton of those out there and, they always looking, that's the market. But I always wanted to have a mallet camp, like a specific one. And when I came into college, my first college experience, I was a drum corps guy and I was a jazz guy. And they put me with this contemporary mallet player. And I started playing scales for him and I was playing really high and he just like bashed everything I loved. He bashed marching bands at the worst thing ever. And I'm not a jazz guy. That stuff is garbage. You guys just play this. And that every lesson was like he just throwing these jabs at me and it was miserable. And with mallet percussion, everybody comes from it from a different place. Some people, that's what they choose. Other people are piano players, and there was no pianos offered in school, so they're like, all right, I guess I'll play the bells, and that's where they come from. Others are in marching band, and they're oboe players, and they want to do marching band, but there's no oboes in marching band, so they end up in the front ensemble, and that's where they're from. So I wanted a camp that embraced all of that had teachers from all of those different areas to where that would be their entry point, but then once they got there, it would widen their gaze to be able to have a teacher who's a modern percussion, contemporary vibraphone player, or a jazz person, or a marching person, a composer, so that they could all come together and widen out. You know what I mean? Because percussion's new, and so are mallets. Anyhow, first year I leveraged every single relationship I had. We borrowed every instrument we could possibly find from every school where we had a connection, and we had 17 kids from 3 states, and that was 2017. And then 2018 we had 53 kids from 4 countries and 14 states. And then 2019 we had about 55 kids from about 5 countries and about 15 or 16 states. So it's really grown. Obviously this year is different. So we pivoted, and the question was, what resources do we have that we can really use to fill a gap? There's already lots of people doing great camps out there. There's lots of great camps that are going to happen this summer for mallet players, for all sorts of musicians. But what I think is not being done, and here's the soundbite, is that what's not being done is thinking about what gaps there are in the traditional education. What are the skills that are needed to survive in this brave new world that we're going to go into? Can we use Ableton? Can we record on our own? What about miking? What about using Mainstage? What about digital workstations? What about MIDI? What about Harmony Cloud, understanding composition? What about arranging? What about video production for what we do specifically? Right? How is that being done? What about using pedals and amplification and all of this next level stuff? What about film scoring? So this year's Mallet Lab, there are no technique classes. I mean, there might be some technique put in there. A lot of the players happen to be mallet players, but these guys are producers, songwriters. We have somebody who's on 87 films, video games, and TV shows, and I guarantee you've heard of him, who's doing 3 sessions on film scoring, all the way starting from setting it up to advanced sound design. And who can't use that? I can't wait for it. We have people talking about reharmonization of jazz standards. You want to play jazz standards, but you want them in your own voice. So how is that done? What are some of the skills to be able to do that? And we're going to start doing that from a level where you could be at any level and still get some value from it. Stefan's going to be there talking all about harmony. I mean, that's going to be an hour and a half of just soaking it up, and it's just going to be great. And so yeah, we have Cameron Leach, who's a contemporary percussion soloist, but his setups and what he's doing and how he uses tracks and you got to run around a marimba, a vibraphone, gongs. He plays all of this crazy stuff with tracks in the background, with the in-ears. How's he creating those tracks? How's he doing it? How's he queuing it up? What's he doing? And we have concerts from everybody. This cat Plexus play, Matt DiBiase, out of California. This guy's on another thing. I don't even know what he's like. What's in the Kool-Aid? Because he's just creating these just multi-track.
Send me him.
Right, crazy.
Crazy.
And he's hitting the chords and he's showing the shapes of the chords on the thing while he's running down. He's just it's super creative.
Editing. Yeah, so creative.
Video editing, right? So Nathan Skinner just did a whole virtual big band. He's just every day putting out content, putting out work. Chase Jackson. It's I guess they don't have kids. I guess I don't know where they're finding the time, but right. I can't wait to learn their process. But you know what? There's something they know about how to do that and put it out with the high quality that they've worked on through all of this time. That I want everyone to be able to benefit from that experience. The challenge is, not everybody knows they need it yet. And I think that if I was like, hey, this guy's going to be on here talking about how you hold your hand and how you play this and the wrist and the fingers, but there's so many people that do that great. And as much as I think that I could quickly sell out a camp by doing a bunch of that stuff and getting guys who are well known for that stuff, I don't feel like I'd be doing the community any service by doing that. So I wanted to find these guys, and people may not know about some of these guys, but I'm telling you, man, there is no chance. I should offer a money-back guarantee because that's how sure I am. I'm not saying
they're on the cutting edge.
Yeah,
we and I both. I mean, I'm seeing every day what people are putting out, and the guys you've assembled, guys and girls, everyone you've assembled for this program, are on the cutting edge. And I think that if you're growing up, if you're young, I mean, no matter what your age, but if you want to be playing music in this day and age, and especially after all of this with COVID, I mean, I think the skill sets that they have to offer are what are going to make you're just going to provide some skills that you really are going to serve you. Are not, like you said, are not being taught anywhere else.
Yeah, and here's a cool thing too. I mean, all of these software companies have 90-day trials, 60-day trials. So the software is going to be available. That shouldn't be a barrier. Oh, I don't have Ableton, or I don't have this. You can for 2 weeks while you try it out, and then figure out if it's something you want to invest in. And if not, there's some companies that we're working with to make sure that everybody gets a full trial for the sake of this camp. So. Other than the cost, and the cost is $400 for the camp for the whole week, and there's 20 sessions. There's 15 classes and 5 concerts, plus Q&A hangs and all that kind of good stuff to where you just get to hang out with these guys. But hey, the platform is changing. It's changed. It's never going to be the same. You're never going to go back to jazz clubs and that's be the only thing you do where there's people shoulder to shoulder and we're packed up. Even if this all disappeared tomorrow, people now see that schools are seeing that, well, we can learn this way. People who would never have thought about this are saying, we better figure this out. Jet clubs who have never thought about this are saying we need to figure this out. And artists are figuring that out too. So how can we be successful for these new platforms that we're going to be able to share our music on? And that's the goal of Mallet Lab 2020.
Yeah, it's moving so quickly. I mean, even to what you're saying, like just think financially, like because of necessity, how much have we still been able, let's forget the things that obviously we all miss, but what are the things that we've still been able to do with no ability to meet in person? I'd still say a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I have both been teaching online. How much have we still accomplished? So I think the financial side of things is going to change a lot too, as far as what you're pointing out with schools. Like, do people need to go to a campus anymore? I mean, we already knew that it was headed in that direction, but this has fast tracked everything. And we've talked many times before this phone call about like this is a wake up call for everyone everywhere, and for musicians, like, hey, you need to get your act together on a lot of these other skills, because there's just I go on social media every day and see someone new who's doing a great new thing. It's just every day,
And
and it's
let
all
me tell you,
growing.
some of these institutions that we're talking, like these colleges, especially these high dollar art schools that are heavily leaned on tuition, not sitting on $40 million, $100 million grants, might not survive this. I mean, some of them who are just hoping they have 1,000 students come in at 60,000 a semester or a year. They're going to have a hard time, and I think that all of it's going to change. But the positive is that now, when I call somebody in Chicago or wherever, and they say, "Hey, we want you to do a clinic," I can say, "Sure, I'll hop on Zoom and let's do it," and I can charge you for it without feeling anything. Like, send me the money, I will do the clinic, and I will add value. It's something where people would have thought, no, that's not worth X dollars to have it online. If you can't come out here, I'm not paying that kind of money, because in their mind, there's not a lot of value in this type of interaction. But now that they're forced into it, people are seeing the type of value. So yes, of course, there are things that we're going to miss. There are revenue streams that are going to dry up. But now you can think about the people who would never have done anything online. I have students. I was already teaching online, but I have students who are like, well, we need to find someone in person. We have to. It's the only way of value. And now they're calling to like, hey man, can we? And it's fine.
Well, here I'll put. I was talking to my brother. Like, Chick Corea is posting ads to take his lessons. Like, I mean,
Yes.
if that's not proof of where we're headed, if Chick Corea's doing that, I'm not saying he needs the money, but I'm just saying if he's doing that, if he's promoting his books, his educational things,
Yep.
what are you doing?
He's
I
like
mean,
he's like at the head. Who did he? Somebody must have had somebody there that was like, Chick, I'm your boy. I'm telling you what you need to do right now. He's probably like, all right, I'll do it. What do you want me to do? Show up and play and talk to the camera? Sure. And then he's just like, oh, we can sell these books. Okay, let's do this. But look at how much value it is. And now people are just seeing it and saying, people just start seeing it and saying, well, I would never do that. And so now we have an opportunity to be reaching out and offering these master classes. I'm doing a lot of trades right now with my school. So other educators are teaching, helping with my kids. I'm helping with other educators' kids, so I don't have to go through the rigmarole of we're just doing like one for ones. And that's been a lot of fun too. And it's also helped me, but actually, it also leads to the question though, how can you make sure you're now having someone who's good? It doesn't just mean having them good. It means someone who understands lighting and understands how to use the tools and understands how to communicate through this venue. It used to just mean who understands, like, who can teach the best. But now if you have someone who you're looking up their nose half the time, they're backlit by a window, you can't see the piano, their phone keeps falling over, and the sound is terrible, then
then it doesn't matter. Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't
that's
matter.
gone. Yeah.
So
No,
now's the time.
100%. It's a brave new world, man. I mean, what's always been fun though is you and I both are always having, whether we're on the road or not, like we're always talking about this stuff. And I feel like you're definitely someone I can look to, you're always thinking about these things. You're always trying to be up on it and bring your best. I mean, with all of the additional responsibilities and time, you have dedicated to other things. Like, I don't know how you get it done. Because it's just so much, but I want to thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate you taking the time. It's always a blast to chat about music, education, everything, man. And like I said at the beginning, man, you're a mentor. Like, I look to you, see how you're doing things, and we're always keeping in contact when we're doing the next thing. So I'll be hitting you up the next time we start some next project, I'm sure.
Thanks,
I'll be like,
man.
hey, Drew, I need you, man. But you've been part of this JazzMemes family since the beginning. So I want to just shout you out for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Before we go, like, is there anything for the young audience we have? Is there anything you just want to leave them with, a message, a thought? I mean, we've shared so much already, but I just think that, like,
Well,
you have that perspective.
what I wanted to go back to, as we're talking, I'm thinking about our relationship, you and me, and I'm thinking about the good times, but I'm also thinking about the rough times. And I'm thinking about when you talk about being a musical director, I think back to gigs where it didn't go so well. You know, gigs where I, as a musical director, and this is one of those skills that you talk about, have gotten screwed. You know what I mean? Like somebody didn't pay it right, or somebody didn't do right by me. And what had to happen was I had to take the loss and try to do right by everybody else. Um, Not going to mention any names of the WIC. Anyway, but I think, you know, when I think about it, like I'm really grateful. Like I remember going through that time, and it was painful. It was painful in a lot of ways, but I did, you know, I did everything I could to make sure, you know, I do everything I could to make sure that all of my artists are taken care of, and as a result, we're sitting here talking right now. You know what I mean? And so the relationship to me, and anybody who I talked to during that time, a lot of people were telling me, just stop, don't do it. Like, you know, especially after, you know, telling what happened. Why would you do that? No, they should understand. They should deal with it. But I'm like, the relationship, I'm not going to miss $1,000, you know, in 3 years, you know, in 4 years, in 5 years, but I will miss Kevin. You know what I mean? Like I will miss the people that I hurt. You know, they're going to be like, yeah, I ain't working for Drew anymore. You know what I mean? Like they won't trust the gig. So at least they know that, you know what, if it doesn't go right, Drew's going to do whatever he can to make it right at some point. Like they have that trust. So as a musical director, I think building that trust with your artists, especially when it's not convenient or comfortable for you, is imperative.
Well, I'd just say on the flip side, I mean, being on the other side of that equation in some senses, like you've done that. And I think one of the things that through the good times or bad, like what I always go back to is like what we first talked about, which is like the experience that we have on stage is so fun and is kind of the thing that's grounded us no matter what happens. We can get on the same page and share about that. And we know that that's really ultimately what we're here to do and serve and kind of experience together. Like, I think that's kept us through all of that. And we know that that's like you said, we build that relationship to where we trust that. And we know that that's what's, you know, what we're here for. So
yeah, the relationships are everything. They affect what happens on stage. They affect what happens off stage. The relationships are everything. And I feel so bad for people who I see, you know, or hear about treating people poorly or doing, you know, or just whatever the case is, because, and they're great players, especially when they're great players, because it's like, man, you could take over the world, man, but because you're playing, but you're just missing that extremely important 10% that you can't do it without, which is just taking care of the people around you and building those relationships.
Yeah, man. Like you said it best. I mean, the value of negativity is just not there. And I think we're living in an age where the focus, like the currency is positivity and support. And that's what you said at the jump, which is just like, you're here to do that. And you have. So again, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
So the next time we do this, it's going to be soon, but I'm looking forward to you coming back down to South Florida. Or to wherever we're going with Sarah or whoever. I'm down, man. Let's
I'll be back soon. I'll be back soon, man, for sure in the summer.
Dude, best of luck. Thanks, man.
Thanks, buddy.